What's going on, my friend? It's Jeff Newport from ChasingStrength.com. And in today's video, we are discussing smart versus hard kettlebell workouts versus smart and hard kettlebell workouts. So let's dive in here by me asking you a question. Do you remember the hardest workout you've ever done? I'm not sure I do per se, but here's one that was definitely pretty hard, and it was circa in 1996, which pains me to actually even bring up because, as you can see by doing math, that was a while ago. So here was the workout, right? It was 10 sets of 10 reps on the barbell back squat. Yep. Good old-fashioned GVT, German volume training. You might recognize it, popularized by Charles Poliquin back in the late 90s. So instead of the prescribed 60 seconds of rest between sets, I took a luxurious 2 whole minutes between sets because 60 seconds of rest between sets of 10, right, at 60% of your 1RM sounded like pure insanity to me. So what I did is I put 60% of my max, which was about 500 pounds at the time, on the bar. So that equated to 315 or 3 plates. And I got to work, right? Started hacking away at my sets. Now, I'd love to say that I crushed this workout and it was amazing and I was the man, but I wasn't. I got through 6 sets before my legs actually started to seize up. So I actually did what any self-professed meathead would do. Of course, I did not quit. I dropped the weight. Okay, I unloaded the bar, put 275 pounds on, and did 2 more sets. So I chipped away and got sets number 7 and 8 completed. And then shockingly, the meathead mentality, right, was still fully turned on. And I finished my last 2 sets using 225 pounds. Predictably, in hindsight being 2020, I could barely walk for about 3 days. Getting in and out of chairs made me clench my teeth. And my legs were literally sore to the touch for about the same time period, right? Probably 3 to 4 days. And it actually took me a full 7 days to be able to walk normally. And now the tough part was I was actually riding my bike back and forth between my house and work at the time. So as you can imagine, things were fun. Now, here's what most people may or may not be shocked at. My strength was actually suppressed afterwards. And it took me a few weeks, to get back on track with my normal training. Now, you might be wondering, or maybe you're not, but still, right? Come on, Jeff, what is the big deal? 10 by 10 swings. That isn't all that bad, right? If you take the 10 by 10 and you switch it over to kettlebell land. In fact, 10 by 10 is commonplace in kettlebell land. And so my response is go do 10 by 10 with 315 pounds butt to ankle squat and get back to me with your thoughts. In fact, my weightlifting coach, Alfonso Duran at the time, right, who was on the Cuban weightlifting team, never liked GVT, German volume training, and actually warned me against doing it. When I asked him why, because that's what I did, is I always asked why. Would get in trouble as a kid all the time for asking why. Alfonso graciously said, it's too unrealistic, okay? It only works for steroid users, and it did a great job of converting those fast twitch 2X fibers into fast twitch 2A fibers and those 2A fibers into slow twitch type 1. Now, that is not what Olympic lifters, which is what I was doing at the time, competing in the sport of Olympic weightlifting. That is not what we want to happen, and therefore not what we want to do. So back to our kettlebells, 10 sets of 10 with a 32 kilo on a 2-hand or even 1-hand swing is like comparing apples to oranges, right? 10 by 10 on the kettlebell ballistics, swing snatches, or even jerks is great for solid conditioning. And this is what so many guys just don't understand. Sets and reps cannot and must not be broadly applied to all exercises. For example, the late Louis Simmons, one of the greatest powerlifting coaches of all time, found that using sets of 20 on the kettlebell ballistics made his lifters way too sore and impeded their recovery. He eventually found that 10 reps per set was the Goldilocks number for strength, a little bit of muscle, and some good conditioning. And strength sport lifters have been using sets of 5 with the slow lifts to pack on slabs of beef that's as strong as it looks, probably since the 1950s at least, maybe earlier, when Reg Park popularized the 5x5, right? Good old 5 sets of 5 reps. That was his thing, and he did that right around like 1958 or so. So a good general rule of thumb is the faster and less complex a lift, the more volume or work you can do in the higher rep ranges before there's a negative return on your investment. Typically categorized by a major technique breakdown or the rapid onset of fatigue, or everybody's favorite, both at the same time. So back to our GVT. We can categorize it as hard, and we can categorize 5x5 as smart. But how do we mix the two, right? What about hard and smart? Is there a way to combine both, right? Smart and hard using your kettlebells to get the best of all worlds. And I actually believe there is. And I believe it's called the double kettlebell complex. Now, what is a double kettlebell complex? It is a series of exercises performed with a pair of kettlebells, obviously, in a row without resting between those sets. For example, you do a set of cleans for 5 reps, then you immediately do a set of front squats for 5 reps, and then you follow that up with presses for 5 reps. Now that's 15 solid reps, okay, that spreads the fatigue around your body while strengthening all your major muscles, including your heart and lungs, instead of depositing that fatigue into one localized area, right, like German volume training would. Now, here's what's really cool about complexes. You can bias them for strength, you can bias them with muscle, right, or you can bias them for conditioning. Now, if you want to bias them for strength and muscle, you simply fill them with grinds or the slow lifts. So here's an example. You do 5 deadlifts, followed immediately by 5 front squats, followed immediately by 5 presses, followed immediately by 5 rows. Again, 20 reps in a row, no rest. Or you can bias your complexes for conditioning by filling them with ballistics, the fast kettlebell lifts. So we'll flash an example up here on the screen. You can do 5 swings, followed by 5 high pulls, followed by 5 push presses, followed by 5 snatches. Again, 20 reps in a row, no rest. Or if you want the best of both worlds, strength and conditioning, right? Strength and muscle mass and conditioning, which isn't both worlds, it's practically all worlds, right? Here's how you can do it. You can do 5 swings, followed by 5 cleans, followed by 5 front squats, followed by 5 snatches, followed by 5 presses. Okay, now it doesn't have to be 5 exercises in a complex. We're just adding a little bit of complexity, for lack of a better term, to the complexes here. And as you can see, we've mixed and matched the ballistics and the grinds. Okay, and yes, you might be wondering, what if I need to lose that spare tire? Well, yeah, complexes definitely help. Now, one of the best things about double kettlebell complexes, besides the fact that they check the old need a challenge box and the get a good workout in box, is that they are incredibly time efficient when you structure them correctly. You can get my workout in as little as 10 minutes, depending on your skill level and the amount of sets you choose to do. For maximum hard and smart, make sure you use the time-tested and true principle of variability. In other words, don't be lame and don't do the same kettlebell complex over and over again for each workout. Change something about it, right? Like one of the following. Change the number of sets, change the number of reps, change the exercises, change the number of exercises, change the rest periods, to name but 5. Admittedly, this is tricky to do if you have a full-time job and a family, because honestly, you probably have better things to do with your time than the old-fashioned trial and error, right? You're looking more for results than error. Now, fortunately, I've been using complexes in some form or another, barbell, dumbbell, sandbag, plate, kettlebell, since 1995, with all forms and kinds of populations. I mean, you name it, athletes, grandmothers, military, blue-collar workers, and of course, desk jockeys. And so what that means is you don't have to waste your time or mental bandwidth on any of this stuff. Simply grab a copy of my best double kettlebell complex programs. Now, these are programs, not workouts, okay, found inside of a product called Kettlebell Hard. I'll leave a link in the video description below for you to check it out if you're interested. Again, it is both smart and hard, which is probably how you'll feel after your first 6 weeks using any one of those programs, right? Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, click the like button, smash the subscribe button, share it with a friend you know needs smart and hard kettlebell training programs. And finally, leave me a comment in the comment section below. What has your experience been with kettlebell complexes, double or single? Until next time, my friend, stay strong.